One of the issues at the last election, without question, was law and order. For most of us, it was the economy. Of course, it was, and the cost of living. In just a sense that this government had run out of ideas, didn't know what they were doing, and just threw money at everything and hoped it would work, and none of it seemed to. Throwing our money, I might add. But law and order was a huge issue at the last election. I won't say it's not a huge issue now, and there were reports over the weekend, for example, of literally scores of bike riders taking over the streets of Auckland again, and the police sort of trying to trace them down. There have been numerous, though, gang busts over the last year. I think the plaintiff calls of people like the mongrel mob and the headhunters say, we're not involved in selling drugs. That, if anybody still believes that, then, let me guess, they're a policymaker in Wellington or in the Green Party. We're not all bad. That sort of nonsense. But there's also been a change in the police commissioner, a new police commissioner, much more old school is a suggestion that the new police commissioner will be, and also a view amongst the public that things aren't quite as bad as they were 12 months ago, or at least the number of sensational law and order stories seems to have de-escalated in that time. What's it like, though, for those who are actually at the forefront of this, at the face of dealing with the antisocials and the criminals in our midst? We're joined now by Chris Cahill. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the show. Lovely to have you back. Were you overseas or something?
Good morning, Michael. Yeah, I have been. No, I think the last time we tried to hook up, I was in Australia for a week at a police conference over there, which was quite interesting. Looking at a lot of the new technology that police will have to consider over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, or probably 5. Things change so quickly.
Well, tell me about that, please, because we do tend to lag in the technology area. How are we going to change in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think it's just, understanding criminals are the quickest to adopt technology. They do it very quickly and they're very adaptable, and police don't do the same, they fall behind. So AI is obviously a real area that police are going to have to get their head around how they can best utilise that. And then there's the technology such as facial recognition technology and the advantages of using that, challenges around privacy versus the benefits, all these sorts of things. So there's a lot happening out there that can make police work smarter rather than harder, but also enhance public safety. It's just getting that balance right. And, of course, there's the costs that go with it as well.
Yes, well, that's always been the big issue. I mean, the police have always had, I remember just giving you guys secure radio transmissions. RT was a big issue. That took years.
Well, believe it or not, most of the country still doesn't have it. It got rolled out in the big centres and then had to stop. It just was too expensive. But interesting enough, it also would have been obsolete technology. And so now they've got another big program coming into place. It's a whole of government program that meets the new technology. I think that's the real difficulty with spending large amounts of money when something can be obsolete so quickly in this day and age.
Yeah, and how do you confront that? Listen, the other thing is the police personnel numbers. The government say they might not now get to recruit 500 additional police over the next 2 years. And in essence, the argument seemed to be because the quality's not there to meet that time basis. Is that what you've heard as well?
Yeah, I'm really pleased that there isn't going to be a drop in the quality. And I think we have to put this into context. We've probably recruited more officers in the last sort of 5 to 7 years now than ever in the history of New Zealand Police. It's thousands. And at some stage that well has to run dry. And police have made some changes around some of the criteria. You now no longer have to be a citizen, you can be a resident, you can apply when you haven't got a full driver's licence as long as you have a full driver's licence when you get into college. And that opens up the pipeline, but it's just important that the filters are still the same at the other end, that by the time you get to college you're still meeting the same standards, and that's proving challenging.
Well, how many cops now, FTE, sworn police? About 15,000, is that right?
No, it's about 10,200 sworn officers.
Oh, 10,000, yeah.
And now the aim is to have that to about 10,700. But the reality is since November last year, the numbers actually haven't increased at all. They're slightly down, if anything. And
is that because of attrition?
Yeah, it's the numbers leaving, which still aren't high. But, I mean, if you lose 5%, that's 500 officers a year. So you've got to recruit 500 new ones before you get ahead. And that's proving challenging. But look, the pipeline is, they are getting a lot of applicants, which is good. It's just how many actually then go on to graduate is the challenge.
The other thing is that the Australians were meant to be making a big push to try and recruit New Zealand trained police. Is that not having the effect that was feared?
It's not having the dramatic effect that was feared would be feared. They're getting dribs and drabs, and certainly they're keen to have them, and they're doing everything they can. I mean, the New South Wales Police announced a pay deal the other day that's just going to increase officers' salaries by about 29 to 40% over a 4-year period. So they're continuing to push the big incentives out there, but at this stage, it's been a trickle rather than a flood, which I'm quite grateful for. I'm surprised because there's certainly some good deals, but I'm glad they're deciding to stay.
Yeah, the other reason might be it's not quite as attractive, though, is it? The police in Australia, they've got their own issues.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, you look at some of them, they've got massive vacancies. They've got a lot of people on long-term sick leave, which tells you things aren't that rosy in those states as well.
Yeah. Listen, just quickly, though, I'm just trying to work out, I'm paid how much if I'm training, and how long is the training? Is it 13 or 16 weeks?
It's now 20. That's one thing they've extended to 20 weeks, which is really positive. 16 was too short. It was probably the shortest of anywhere in the world. So it's 20 weeks now. You get roughly about $58,000 while you're training. It depends if you include which is pretty good. But you include it is, unless you've given up another job that's paying a hell of a lot more and you've still got your mortgages and all that to pay, and you're down at college for 20 weeks, remember? So you've sort of got double the costs in a way. Well, not double, but extra costs. But once you graduate, it depends if you include your superannuation. So they graduate on around that $75,000 mark, but that includes your superannuation, and so it's not your take-home pay. You can't spend it. So that can put a real strain on families, especially if you're coming from industries that were earning a lot more. And I ask all the recruits, and a significant percentage, some wings well over 50%, take a pay cut to join the police, which tells you you're getting good people joining for the right reasons. Certainly not joining for the money.
Okay. All right. Now, the big thing, of course, is there's been a change in leadership at the police, but also a change in political emphasis, obviously, in law and order. I guess let's deal with each of those to turn. The police, or the last government, to give them some credit, were changing legislation to make it easier for the police to go after gangs on the basis of attacking their finances. The sort of classic 1920s, 1930s IRD into the mafia type actions. But this government's increased legislation again. Have you got enough legislation to be able to do the job?
In general, I think so. I think there's been some significant changes around asset seizure, which I still think is one of the best way to attack criminals. Take away the assets to take away the incentive. But there's some search laws that have changed, and there's clearly the gang patch ban that's now coming. We've had some significant changes, and police are learning how to use those in a clever way and get the most out of those law changes. Obviously, things have to work through the courts, and we'll see how everything settles down. But there has been some good improvements to give police increased tools over the last few years from both governments, I'd have to say.
Yeah, no, I concede that. The gang patch ban is, as a policing tool, it's only ever been a policing tool. It's just something in there. It's not the answer. But is that proving a little bit more effective than people thought?
Well, yeah, I'd have to say it's proving more effective than I thought. I mean, I was very much, how is this going to work? And it really did come down, how are the gangs going to react to this? But police have taken a hard line. They've made it very clear that if you breach it, you're going to be arrested. And the gangs have figured out, I think, very quickly, there's two big incentives to obey the law. One is you get arrested, you lose your patch, and the law says you lose it for good. So it gets destroyed. The second is if police don't arrest you at the time, they can then come and do a search warrant on your address. And no one wants the cops turning up at your address or your gang pad. We saw the headhunters in Auckland suddenly, the day after the gang patch ban came in, police were doing a search warrant on their pad and arresting their presidents, seizing patches and seizing bikes. That is not what gangs want. So they figured out pretty quickly the easiest way to avoid that is take the patches off. So, It's been a lot more effective than I would have predicted, to be honest.
Well, I could have told you that, having a bit of personal experience.
Well, in fairness, you did.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been on here and you said it worked, and I'd have to say you've been proven right at this stage.